So you want to draw like your favorite artist, or maybe you have a bunch of cool ideas that you want to be able to illustrate digitally. But it just seems like there's so much to learn. Where do you even start? Like, what kind of tablet do you get? What kind of app do you need? How do you even begin to learn the software when the interface looks like this? Like, what's important to learn, what's not? What are some things to start practicing at the beginning? How much does it all cost? Well, in this complete guide, I'll go over everything you would possibly need to get started as a digital artist. You can check all the chapters in the timeline below to jump to whatever you need, but if you're a complete beginner, if you're starting from scratch, you need tools. Tools like these, your drawing tablet. Now for this kind of stuff, you really have a ton of choice now. I'll put a bunch up on screen so you can have a look at like the current prices and all that stuff. But really, we have 3 categories. Simple pen tablets like these, where there's no screen, you draw directly on this thing, and basically the pen you have here replaces the mouse. So just like the mouse, there's gonna be some sort of hand-eye disconnect because you're not, it's not like you're drawing on a piece of paper. And that does take a little while to get used to. So that's why this is the budget option. This is for peasants. That's where I started. It does take a while to get used to it, like a couple of weeks, but after a while it becomes completely natural, just like using a mouse. But if you ain't got time for that and you have a little bit more budget, well, maybe a pen display tablet would be more up your alley. So this is an actual display, so you would draw directly on it. So obviously that's going to be a little bit more expensive, but as a result, you're able to go right into it. It feels really natural from the beginning because it's just like drawing on paper. Now again, like the brands on screen here, they're brands that I'm familiar with, that I've tested over the last 10 years plus. They all work great, so go for the cheaper ones. The only thing I would say to be careful about, unlike with the other drawing pads where you can go really small, with this you'll want to go like 16 inches plus. Because anything under that, with the UI included for your drawing app, everything becomes really cramped in the screen and it's not a good experience. So obviously if you can afford it, go bigger. You're never going to be disappointed. Now your third option is something that's going to be all included. So you have the computer and the display as one, like like an iPad. So if you have the Apple Pencil for this, works great. Now, all the other brands I mentioned also have their own version of the iPad. It's obviously way more expensive than all the options we've seen before, but some people prefer that. So now that we know about tablets, let's look at the actual software that you'll need to be able to use these devices. So now, unless you have an iPad or something similar, you're gonna need to install the drivers for your tablet, right? So for whichever tablet you choose, make sure that you follow the instructions and you download the right drivers. Now, if something's messed up with your tablet or your drivers, you will know immediately because when you start to draw, it'll look like this. No different than using a mouse, right? Because what it should look like is a brush that has pressure sensitivity. So something like this. Ooh, see the difference? When I press just a little bit, it's a very faint line, but the harder I press, the darker it gets and the bolder my line gets. This is pressure sensitivity enabled. That's what we're paying for. If everything is set up right, this is what you should be getting in your painting software of choice. And of course, now let's take a look at all of those options that we have, because I'm using Photoshop here, but there's many other options, better options. Now, to follow the kinds of tutorial I have on the channel, there's really like 3 to 4 apps that I would recommend. So let's start with the cheapest one. It costs $0 and it's called Krita. It's hard to beat that kind of value, and it's a very good app if your budget is non-existent. But you won't find a lot of experienced artists using this because it does have some limitations. Using Krita, I'd say you'd be able to do about like 70% to 80% of the stuff that I do on the channel. It just sucks that you can't import Photoshop made brushes like you can with all the other apps on this list, but otherwise it's definitely not bad. Now the next one, going up slightly in price, but really not much, just for a couple of bucks, well, you would have Procreate. The only thing is that this one is for iPad only, but it is a very popular combination. I would say like about 1/3 of all my students use this setup. And then for a couple more dollars, you would have Clip Studio Paint. This is the one that I would probably recommend for most people. That's the one that's actually the most popular amongst my students. And it's especially nice because they have it available for all devices. So whether you're on the PC or any of the portable standalone tablets that we looked at, you'll be able to use it. And it's very good. I will say the PC version is the best. It's the most like rich in feature out of the bunch, but it's, I would say, maybe better in some cases than the industry standard, which is Photoshop. What I use, what you'll find in most film and video game studios. Photoshop is only really good if you have a computer. On any other device, it'll be kind of trash. And also happens to be the most expensive out of all the options by far because it's a monthly subscription. Yay. Now, personally speaking, I've always used Photoshop and I do get a lot out of it for the price. So to me, it's still kind of worth it. But yeah, if like budget is a concern, you should probably forget about this one. Just use Clip Studio Paint. So now that you have your tablet of choice, your painting software of choice, let's actually dive in the software itself to try to give you a solid foundation so that you'll be able to follow most of the tutorials on my channel. But of course, if your goal is to become a digital artist, you're gonna need much more than that. Knowing the software is just the first step of many. And if you've been looking for a complete digital art education, so learning all about the digital tools, all the different things that you can do with that, and of course, all the foundational content that you would need to learn as an artist to be able to draw anything your mind can imagine. Well, you might want to hear about the sponsor of this video, YTartschool for digital artists. It's my complete art education program that I've been working on for years. It's got a complete curriculum of nearly 100 hours of structured content, starting off real easy and then increasing the difficulty and the complexity as you make your way through the classes, through the terms. It comes with assignments, a week by week study guide, so you always know what you should be working on next and whether you're ready to move on to the next step or not. We have an awesome Discord community, and I've just completed the French subtitles for the entire program, and also I'm now working on the Spanish subtitles, which is almost done. So check out the YTartschool program with the link down in the video description. You'll learn all about it. And if you're watching this now, you're lucky because it's still on sale for a couple more days until the end of the month to celebrate the spring sale. It's what allows me to keep creating art videos like this every single week on the channel. So thank you so much if you're a student already. And if you're not, what are you waiting for? So like I was saying, now we have the tablet, the software. Let's check out how to actually use this thing. Now, real quick, before I show you a couple of exercises to get more familiarized with your tablet, get the hang of your new tool, we'll create a new canvas. Like most software, Control-N does the trick, or you can go in here, File, New. Now in Photoshop, just like in most painting softwares, you're gonna get a couple of things in here. The most important is going to be your size. So the width and the height in pixels. So make sure that you select pixels, not anything else. And what I recommend as a good size to get started, so something that's not going to be too small that you'll see all the pixels, everything will be pixelated, but something that's not too big either, that will make your computer catch on fire. Usually 1080p resolution is a good starting point. For everything else here, you can also change this if you ever plan to print your drawings. Make sure that you got enough resolution. This is only for printing. And then look at the other options that I have here and make sure that yours is something that's similar. All right, so let's try it here. Nice and clean brush strokes. But if we zoom in, we can see that we don't have that much resolution. We just zoom in a little bit and we can start to see pixels. So actually what I usually recommend is to go double that. So go 4K, which would give us a resolution of like 3840 by 2160 or anything close to that. Now, once again, this is a good balance between performance and quality. If you're printing, for example, something that's going to be huge, probably want a little bit more resolution than that. But for most of you, this should do the trick. Now, before we look at the actual tools, let's take a look at their shortcuts, their hotkeys, because those are tools that you'll be using a lot of the times. And so I have kind of like my cheat sheet here for Adobe Photoshop hotkeys. So feel free to save that for later, pretty useful. But for the most part, what you'll be using the majority of the time will be those two here, and Alt click for color picker. So if you want to select a color here, let's say I want to select the blue, I click Alt and then I tap here, and now I have the blue selected. I want to select this blue here, do the same thing, Alt click. So alternating between my brush, my eraser, and making sure that you can color pick. This should allow you to do a lot of stuff already while keeping things super simple. And of course, this way you won't have to go click here to select the brush or to select the eraser every single time. Ain't nobody got time for that. All right, so I know that there's a lot of icons in here. It can be a little bit overwhelming if you're brand new to this. And also your layout, your UI might be slightly different. If you want to have a similar layout as I do, those are the ones that I have activated. The navigator, this one here, layers, my layer tab, my history, to go back in time and kind of undo, and well, my color picker here, my color box. Now with that, here is one exercise that I highly recommend that you do often. You don't even need to do it digitally, actually. This is something that you should just do all the time for pen control, for dexterity. And while you do it, make sure that you don't have any smoothing here. So smoothing is a hex. Brushstroke will actually go a little slower and kind of even out the input to create a more continuous, clean line. The only reason why you would ever want to have some smoothing in here is if you have like shaky hands, as in like a medical condition, or if your tablet is just really, really bad. And when you draw a straight line like this, it kind of jitters a little bit. In that case, understandable. Feel free to use a little bit of smoothing. But if you're trying to improve your dexterity, which is the whole point of this exercise, make sure that you disable it so that what you draw is what you get, just like on a real paper. And there's really two exercises that I would recommend, at least to get you started. First, drawing circles with one line, one continuous line. The circle is one of those things that you'll draw all the time. And so practice drawing it at different sizes, getting as clean a result as possible, as consistently as possible. And then the other one would be tracing a line, a curved line preferably, nice and quick and confident, even if you're not. And then trying to draw as equally fast and with as much confidence another brush stroke parallel to the first one, but faster than this. And if you can, closer than this without ever touching. So this kind of exercise is really good for dexterity in general. This is something that I actually recommend that you do on paper as well. Like I said, it's not just digital, but if you're new to using a pen tablet, this should help break it in for you a little bit faster. All right, now we're almost done. There are just a few of the tools in here that are very important that you should totally know. Otherwise, you're gonna have a hard time doing digital art. And the first one here will be layers. I'm pretty sure most of you know what layers are, but just in case, it's basically another sheet of paper that you're gonna add on top of your background layer. And so now I'm on a separate layer and we can't really see anything in here, but that's the point because there's nothing on this layer. It's like an empty, transparent page. But as soon as I start to draw on it, now you'll see very, very subtle. Probably you won't be able to see, but it appeared here. So there's a little bit of a preview. And now this is on a separate layer. So let's say I hide my background. The background is hidden, but this remains. And so if I want to erase some of these lines, I can go ahead without any problem. I won't erase the background because it's on a separate layer. Now in Photoshop, and this is going to be very similar across all the different painting software, either way. But you'll have first the option to toggle visibility for that layer. So on and off, usually be kind of like a little eye here. Up here, you're going to have the opacity for that layer that's selected. So you can reduce it or increase it. Now let's say I draw something on a new layer. I can also change the blending style for that layer. So by default, everything's set to normal. It's opaque paint. But let's say I go and select multiply. Then it'll add the paint on top of everything that's underneath that stack. And as a result, everything will get darker and darker. And so we can play around here with the different options. Usually, once again, those will be pretty much the same across the different software. So let's set that back to normal. And then finally, the last thing here that's pretty useful will be the alpha lock. So in Photoshop, it'll be this little thing here, the little square. But essentially what it does is it locks in everything that you've painted so far. So you can't add any more paint while still being able to modify what you have here. If I paint right now, I'm just painting over it as usual. But if I undo that and I select the alpha lock right here and I try to paint again, as you can see, I'm only able to paint within what's been locked before, the paint that's already on that layer. So this is a very useful tool in a lot of different scenarios. So yeah, when it comes to layers, that should be pretty much everything you need to know. You should be able to do a lot of stuff with just that. Now, moving on from that, let's go and check out one more tool here that's pretty useful. It's going to be the lasso tool or the selection box. So this is going to create a box. This will be freehand, both the same. So if I create a new layer here and create a selection, when I paint, I'm going to be painting within that selection. So very similar to the alpha lock, except that in this particular case, I can deselect and then do it again on the same layer without having to touch the alpha lock. To deselect from a selection, because often you'll try to paint elsewhere and it's not going to work. It will only allow you to paint within the selection. So to unselect, you click Control D, or whatever the equivalent of that is on a Mac, who knows? And now you're able to paint wherever you want because there's no more selection. Now, why would I use a selection? Well, maybe for something like this. So let's say I want to create a nice gradient. You can go like this, and maybe add a little bit of highlight here, and wow, suddenly I have a sphere. And I can be pretty messy with my brush strokes because I am bound to this selection only. I want to get out of there. Control D. Oh, also important, something that I haven't mentioned, but to navigate in here, to drag the canvas around, you just press and hold spacebar and then click. This allows us to pan around the canvas. And in Photoshop, at least, you can also zoom in and out by clicking Control Space instead and dragging this way. So just the spacebar, it drags it, Control Spacebar, zooms in and out. All right, now I want to save this masterpiece. How do I do that? I'm going to go ahead and Control S. We can go here and File Save. And here is going to bring up a window and you're able to save it in whatever format that you prefer. Usually, if you're planning to show your masterpiece on the interwebs, you'll go for a JPEG, call it whatever, and hit save. Now we're gonna get some compression option here. Basically, you wanna set it to baseline, nothing to change here. And usually select the quality in between 8 or 10. Any more than that, you won't notice the difference and the file will be much larger. And any less than 8, you'll start to get a lot of artifacts because of the compression. File will be smaller, but it also look like crap. 9, 10, usually it's pretty good. Now, of course, if you want to save your Photoshop file or your work file, regardless of the painting software that you use, if you want to be able to access all your layers and come back in here and keep painting, you'll want to save it as a PSD, not a JPEG. So by default, it will always save as a PSD, and this is a Photoshop file, a Photoshop document. So in most cases, you're gonna have 2 documents, your working file, your PSD, and your JPEG once you're done. And we can open up the JPEG again here, because remember, we're working in 4K resolution, so this might be a little big to post on the internet. What we can do here is go image size and reduce that by a little bit. Let's say by 50%, but this is still pretty good. Big enough so that we can retain all the details, but it's not going to take forever to load online. And we're done. No, wait, not true. One last thing, custom brushes. So when you open up any painting software, you're going to get a set of default brushes. Default brushes, they work pretty well. What I recommend is that you find a soft brush, so something like this. You'll be able to find those in any painting software and use that for all your shading needs, right? So maybe you're trying to draw a sphere with some highlights here, and you want everything to be nice and soft and smooth, then you want to use a soft brush. If you don't, and instead you use a hard brush, well, when it comes to time to paint in the highlights, you'll get a lot of brush strokes that you'll have to fight to get rid of all of this. So just a lot more work. Now it can give a cool look to it, and I highly recommend that you experiment with all this stuff. But unless you have good amount of control over your pen, good amount of dexterity, this is going to be a little bit more challenging to do. So for that reason, I highly recommend, for best result, that you use a soft brush. Otherwise, you'll be left to do what I'm doing right now and like control picking, kind of like the in-between color, painting a little bit more of that very, very softly, then selecting another kind of in-between color and going about it this way, refining with time and patience. And then maybe by the time you get old, you'll be done. So those are the default brushes that I would recommend, but maybe you've heard me talk about having my own custom brushes that I offer for free. Like you'll find the link for down in the video description, possibly the best brushes in the world. So if you want to try those out too, well, let me show you how exactly to import them in Photoshop or your software of choice. The brushes don't make the artist, but sometimes they help. So of course, the first step will be to download them. So in Photoshop, with your brush selected, you would just go and right click to bring up this menu here. And then we go and click import brushes. Super simple. Select the brush pack in question, and there they are. So now you'll be able to use my legendary line art brush that I use for all of my sketches and all of these other brushes that are some of my favorites. Now, if we switch over to Clip Studio Paint, and here it'd be very simple. All you got to do is go here, like the little drop down thing, and import subtool. So same idea, you select the brushes and then it's loading and boom, there they are, all loaded up. And in here, they're gonna work essentially the same way, minus some changes, but I just use them as is because they work great for me. So there you go. This is going to conclude this beginner's guide to digital art. I hope this was helpful. So again, if you want the slow and more in-depth version, well, definitely check out my art program with the link down in the video description. But now if you're all set up and you're itching to put all of this into practice, to actually test out your skills, test out your new tools, I actually made another guide here going over everything you would possibly need if you're just starting as an artist. So all the stuff to work on, all the stuff to practice in order as your first steps. So check it out. It's going to be right here on screen. It'll pop up in just a second. I will see you over there.